the Americans say, hey, just a minute, let's give the others a chance. And by educating them through analogies, telling them that if Sarwan was not given a chance to go bat by being selected first, how would we have known that he was going to be such a great batsman? So when people ask the question, who is Ramjattan, who is Sheila Holder, who are Nigel Hughes and all of that, we could prove to you that we can bat and score the centuries far superior to the PPP if just given the chance to be selected. Try us. Try us. What you also do, brothers and sisters, by making selections that are others that what exists right now, you largen up the pool of political resources that you can get, so that lots of people can appreciate, hey, there are other players around the place. The government of Guyana, however, would only want to play themselves. Jagdeo, Robert Prasad, Donald Ramatar. And if they didn't, they reconfigure, they go and they say, it will be Donald Ramatar, Robert Prasad and Jagdeo. We want to tell you what we can do for the country. And let's first of all begin with the fact that the value-added tax in the first 100 days of an AFC government is going to be reduced from 16% to 12%. We want more disposable income in the pockets of Guyanese poor, like the man mentioned. So when they go to the groceries, they're going to have at least a greater amount that they can walk home with. We want also to create an entrepreneurial class. The public sector in Guyana is its biggest sector. And public sector spending is so massive. When Dr. Jagan had that country, in 92 to 97, he had 13 ministries and 1 advisor. Today, the PPP has ensured that we have 23 ministries and 8 advisors. What it has done is to create jobs for the boys, as Khemraj was talking about. Jobs for the boys. And when you create a ministry, you got to find drivers for the ministers, you got to find 100 employees, you got to find a whole new building and all of that. We feel in Guyana that we can cut the ministries back to 13 or 14, we're going to save plenty of the wasteful spending that we today have. And they're not only ministers, they got ministers within the ministry. We cut that and we found, after doing the computation, we saved $4 billion. We cut the corruption through the procurement commission that is supposed to be established so that you can put people like Christopher Ram and our former Auditor General, who told me that he's so interested, on Anand Gulsaran. He's going to stop the man, the corruption back home with the men of integrity like them. That alone will save us a further $6 billion. Now, when you start saving like that, you can start spending it now in what will create the engine of growth. Entrepreneurs. Rather than create ministries for the boys and jobs for the boys, you're going to have what is called training, and also what we feel is an extremely important institution that we want to have built in that country, a state development bank. Brothers and sisters, when you train entrepreneurs to get into industries like agro-businesses, aquaculture, dairy farming, bee production, honey production and things like that, as a start, you need capital to start a business. You go to the banks today, the commercial rate is 16% interest. Who will ever borrow in an insecure country like that, where energy needs are so high, energy costs are so high, It's very difficult. We feel like something like the Guy Bank, we call it the State Development Bank, will be set up. With the monies that you save from the corruption and the massive spending, that can go towards ensuring that you have a development bank, so that when people want to buy a boat engine and a boat to go do fishing, catch whatever fish in this ocean, or if they want to do shrimp farming, and that is becoming somewhat popular now, they must have the capital at, let's say, 4 or 5% interest. I think Taran Khemraj had mentioned in part of his programming of our action plan that it will go to the extent of about 4 or 5% interest. As against what we have today, 16%. Because we believe our human resource elevation is what is going to ultimately elevate the country, not the government's elevation. All this talk about laptop, it's all gimmicks, as mentioned by Khemraj. And we have been indicating that. That is the culture that we have back home, where come elections time, you're going to be given some goodies, roads going to be built in Port Morant and Albion, and in Charity and some places, and then people are going to go back. That is not going to happen this time around. We have been telling the people, preempting, sort of, that look, they're going to come with their goodies to you. Take the goodies, it's alright. But in the ballot box, ensure you show your rebelliousness and you make sure that we have change in that country.
Goodies all over.
Brothers and sisters, goodies all over, but then reason prevail. So you will take the goodies, whether it's Obama or Clinton or McCain, whatever. But when you go into the ballot box, you ensure you vote reason. And that's what we ask. This kind of scenario, if not changed, will create the conditions for this exact crime situation we have back home. And let me talk a little bit about the crime. It is what is frightening Guyanese not to want to go back home. I had a relative somewhat distant. He left Minnesota, went down to Port Morant. The man didn't even start talking happy family yet. He was killed. Ramudit. Say what? 48 man. And so it has sent a tremendously frightening message across the diaspora, non-resident Guyanese and citizens that are over here. It has sent. But what had happened? After the fiasco that we had about 8 years ago, our present Chief Justice, Mr. Ian Chang, along with David Granger and a couple of other people, were asked by the President, Barrett Jagdeo, to come up with recommendations as to how we're going to professionalize and better the police force. 101 recommendations were made by Mr. Ian Chang as to how we're going to do the strengthening, the fortifying of the institution called the police force. How are we going to professionalize it? And how, by the way, we're going to balance the police force. How are we going to open academies in Berbice and in Essequibo and in Linden? And what did the government do? They have not done anything with it. Ian Chang's recommendations. Why is it that they do these things? You spent over $100 million commissioning a commission for purposes of coming up with recommendations, and then when they recommend, you do not implement. You know why? We believe that there's a motive behind it. You do not solve the crime situation, so elections time come, you can easily tell the people the crime, y'all want all them crime to happen, you know, Luziknan can happen back, the Kaicho people could be killed. All of that is behind, because if you solve the crime back home, brothers and sisters, there might very well not be that kind of motivation to talk race at the bottom house when the PPP go out and do their work. We have also seen that addition to the Ian Chang's recommendations, the 101, the British indicating last year that we're going to give the Guyana government $1.6 billion. We're going to bring Scotland Yard detectives and superintendents to train the Guyana police force. And we are going to give them the equipment to do the necessary things to strengthen the forensic departments. Clement Rohior, Gotna Baitne minister, indicated that he would prefer to have the money, the $1.6 billion. But he don't want the superintendents to come because, and this was what the argument was, and it's racism again. He said, you just can't bring white people over to Guyana to train largely black people. You know what the British High Commissioner told him? Hey, we got so many black superintendents in Scotland Yard, we're not going to send any white people. But he didn't realize that Britain has gotten multicultural and multiracial. And very many of those people that could be sent out, and they also indicated to me that not only black British policemen we will send, we got plenty from India that we could send to take care of what the minister was trying to use as a rationale to exclude professionalism from the police force. And so there is some sense in all the madness you see. And that goes back to what I just mentioned. The whole approach to politics being ethnic oriented. You want to put black man back there. And this is it. I want you to understand that. So the British, what they did, they took back their $1.6 billion and said, Tata. We Guyanese sometimes over here don't know that as happening. They know that the sugar industry is in so much turmoil. They gone and give for corrupt reasons. Mr. Khemraj didn't want to mention why the Chinese got the contract, but it was corruption. 20% again had to go to senior government ministers when you get the Chinese.
That is true, that is true.
Okay? And so the thing collapsed, the boiler design is not proper, and a $200 million investment is all going ground. It's grounding. Instead of grinding, the factory grounding. And I want you to understand all of this. Because if we don't, we will very much see that, man, look, give them guys another chance. And then we will get the argument, all right, Barrett's coming off at the end of this year, so we can give Donald. Donald might change a little. No, it is not going to change. Inherent in that party now is an attitude that goes with characteristics that are uncaring. Very much uncaring. I suppose that because they take the Guyanese for granted. And so, brothers and sisters, it is important to understand these points, which we have been making to all Guyanese across the regions. But I want to come back to a point. Doing that which will take to ensure changes in Guyana requires support from the diaspora. How you can do that? It is largely to make the telephone calls to your relatives. When you send the $200 and the Fila boots and the Nike boots and all them jerseys and so on in the barrels Christmas time, what you have also done to Guyanese is to damage the work ethic. I remember as a small boy in 47 Village. The dependency syndrome that has been created as soon as you land out there now. They want a quarter, they want a half, they want a bottle. And I'm telling you, it is the truth. Because all the best and the brightest have come over here. Literally, what is left is not necessarily, it's largely mediocre. And so also the work ethic has been affected by that sending back and